in your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the...
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Thanks for tuning in again this week, guys and girls. This week I thought I would mix it up a little bit. We have Carolyn here, which is joining us. Carolyn is who we can all be thanking for this podcast. It's her baby. She works with it every week to make sure that you guys hear the content coming from me. And she was asking me one day, Nathan, what do you want to talk about on the podcast, etc., etc. And one day I was sitting there and I said something and she goes, "Diamond hands, matey, diamond hands." And I was like, "What the hell are diamond hands?" And she goes, when you hold on to something for so long. And I actually felt a bit out of touch. And I was like, wow, I'm feeling old. And, I've been saying a lot of things for years and, covering off from all different things, from building a portfolio to renovations to crazy things out there about how the economy works. And, I realized there's different people listening in from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. And I realized that as I've got a lot of grey hair now, I'm getting a little bit old. And I thought, Carolyn is young and she's, starting out in investing herself in buying properties and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, let's get her on to ask me some questions and, answer some questions that she'd like to know. So, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Hey guys, so what I do for Nathan is I'm a social media coordinator, and so if you guys message through the social pages, I'm the one messaging. So say what's up to the B.Invested page and make sure to follow us there. So
you got some questions for me, so what are we gonna...
So the first question I have is could you give us an overview of what a new investor would have to go through to buy their first property?
I guess, when starting out, we help a lot of people. Probably half the people we've helped out over the years have been first home buyers, getting ahead. And, people coming from all different walks of life. And I see, sometimes people will come in and they're like, I can't afford to buy that house. I can't afford to buy the dream house, etc. And this is where, our business, we have a lot of gratitude for tenants, because most of our owners are, coming in, they're just people that want to get ahead, and a lot of people are tenants as well. So, working out sort of what are the goals of getting into property, why am I buying the property, what sort of property do I need to have. A lot of people think for their first property they've got to buy the biggest, the best. The broker says you can borrow $800,000 or $500,000, so you go and buy a property for $100,000 more than that, and just push in to get the best that you can get, but without thinking about what's the strategy, what is the end goal. So I think before anyone should do anything, they should have clarity about where it is that they're trying to go to, what their goals are, what the property needs to achieve. And once they have, the game plan in place, then start taking action. And, just as much as, this podcast wouldn't be as great without you looking after it, my portfolio wouldn't be as great without having, all the wonderful people around us, whether it be from finance or from legal or from accounting or whatever. So you need to have the right team around you. So make sure that you plan, have the right broker, the right accountant, the right lawyer, to help you on your team, because you can buy one property, that's cool. Most people get stuck at one or two. You want to have the right team that can help you get from 1 to 2 to 10 to 20.
Do you know any property investors yourself who they do it all themselves?
What do you mean?
They don't really have a team around them. They want to do everything themselves. Do you know any investors?
I've met thousands of investors over the years. Look, most people in Australia have 1 or 2 properties. If they're an investor, they only have 1 or 2. They don't have, 5, 10, 15, 20. There's less than 18,000 people in the country, or less than 0.001% of the population, which actually has 6 or more properties. So out of that, it's very few that I know that have more than sort of 3 or 4 that don't have the right team around them, because they get stuck. So when I say the team, everybody needs a broker, right? Everyone's going to need a lawyer, Everyone's going to need an accountant. Just make sure that those people that are on your team, it doesn't matter, you're going to be employing somebody to do something, right? You can't just do everything yourself. You're not a lawyer unless you are a lawyer and whatnot. So just make sure that those people are competent and have an understanding of what you are trying to achieve and have actually been able to help other people along the way as well.
That's some pretty good advice. So for the next question I have for you is, what should you do if you have no money in your savings for a deposit? But is there any other ways that you can save up for this deposit amount? Because I've heard you've talked about other strategies that people can get that deposit amount.
Yeah, there's all different things. Like looking at the world today, is very different than when I first bought my first property. When I bought my first one, I had to work real hard. I'd saved about $40,000 to buy my first property, and that was out in Western Sydney for $248,000. There's if we look, to save up at 18, 40 grand is a lot of money. A lot of people don't do that in their whole life, but I just pushed myself, worked hard, etc. I remember back in the day, I used to go and buy anything I could flip. I was going to the shops one day, and I saw this old Toyota Corolla on the side of the road. It was a blue one, and it was 1985 model. It was unregistered, and it was just like literally about a kilometre away from my house and about a kilometre away from the shops. And I went and looked at the car and said $300 on it, and I popped my head in the window and I saw that it had a new Sony Explode car radio deck in it, right, CD player and stuff. And I was like, that thing's going to be worth $300. So I called the person up, and I offered them like $150 or something, and I got it, let's call it $150. I got it for $150, took it home, just drove it back down the street, and then put in the Trading Post, which is a newspaper back in the day, and I flipped the car for like $800-900, and I took the radio out and sold it for $300, and I parted the car. I could have parted it as a lot further. But if I made $500 from doing that on a weekend whilst I was doing everything else that I was doing, then that's cool. So there's lots of things that you could be doing. I used to flip caravans back in the day.
Oh wow!
I used to buy caravans for like $2,000, and I'd put them back in the Trading Post. I'd put a better ad out and all that sort of stuff, and I'd sell them for $3,000 or $4,000. I'd make like $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 for doing that. I did a few of those things over my time, and looking at what you could do. Like there was no Uber, there wasn't eBay, there wasn't ways of earning money on an Amazon store, there wasn't any YouTube or social media back in the day, so it was a little bit difficult. But you could get a side hustle, you could invest. There was no Bitcoin, there was nothing. Like I tried to trade shares, which I did a little bit. I made some money, lost some money. Shares weren't my thing. Crypto was much more my thing, but it just was a little bit after the time when I actually had money at that point. So a lot of people think that they can't do something because they don't have money, but you look around your house. Like, could you do a deal with someone? Could you get someone that has got money and potentially find a deal and be able to put them onto the deal, and they use their capital and you're servicing? You might have a sibling that has no deposit, and you might have the deposit, but you may not have servicing. They might have the servicing, or the vice versa, and you could do a deal and go halves with them. I'd prefer to stick away from going halves with people. You could go.
Why is that?
Because let's say, for instance, I don't know, you got a brother and a sister, right? And they're there, and they're both, say, 25 at the moment. And then at the age of 30, one of them wants to go travel and party for the rest of their life. The other one wants to go get married and settle down. One person may want to sell the property, the other one may want to keep the property, and it can put a void in the relationship. So then, you need to have clear boundaries as to what the property is going to do specifically. I have done a couple of times where I've owned properties with people, but they've been for specific reasons. I planned on selling them and getting in and out of the deal quick smart, because I didn't want to have any issues in the future. How many people do we know which you're friends with at school and you're no longer friends with them? Like, you're quite young, so you're probably still friends with all your friends from school, but how many people do you know that are 40 that are still friends with their school friends and that? And people change in life. It's a big commitment to be financially tied to someone forever. So, have a plan to get into the deal if you're going to do that. Have also an exit strategy on how to get out of the deal. But the other thing is some people nowadays are borrowing from their parents. Like, I didn't have the opportunity to, just because my family weren't, wealthy, where they had just cash, excess cash and all that sort of stuff. I got help from my mum, obviously. I had a roof over my head. I got 3 square meals a day and all that sort of stuff. So starting out, living at home and minimising my expenses was really, really important, and it certainly helped a lot. But the other thing as well, like, sometimes people buy stuff that they don't need. So they might have like a jet ski, a motorbike, a cool car that's got a loan attached to it, or, a cool car that they put all their money into. Sometimes it might be a matter of, selling off that thing to be able to raise the capital to invest into a property. And I remember once I was out the front of a house. I don't drink. I occasionally have a drink nowadays. I never really drank, but the first time I really drank, I was like maybe like 21, 22 or something like that. And one morning there was a thing called a hangover that I had, and I rocked up to an auction. I bought this property, and it was $140,000, and I thought about it. I was like, shit, I've got $5,000. I put that down as a deposit, and I was like, how am I going to come up with the other sort of 40 grand or 30 grand that I need, about 30 grand that I need to come up with? How am I going to come up with that funds in order to buy the property? So I sold my car, and it was only a couple of months old, and I bought a $200 car, and I drove around in a $200 car. And then what I did later is I was able to pull equity out from that property. So it was a much more smarter move. So, we have options in our life. A lot of people just use them for, short, cheap thrills and whatnot. It's a matter of being strategic and being thrifty and smart and conservative as well with the options of what we take. So, look around you. There's lots more things that you can do. You could possibly borrow off your parents if you really wanted to as well as another option.
Do you recommend that?
Yeah, like, it just depends. Like, everyone's situation is different. If it's right and your parents want to help you, but make sure that you get the right structuring around that, because I see a lot of people when they go and buy a property and their parents have helped them, they'll actually cross-collateralise the property, so there becomes a lot of risk. So if your parents are going to go guarantor, and this is no financial advice because we don't give financial advice around here, but if your parents were to give you some money, it'll be less risk them to pull out the equity per se and give you the $50,000. So let's say, for instance, you need a $50,000 deposit. Your parents could go guarantor, and what the bank would do is cross-collateralise their property with your property. So they go on your loan, their property is now at risk. But if they were to pull that equity out and give you the capital, that means that if you don't pay them back, then they're out of that money. So the risk is less risk because your assets are not tied together, and the bank doesn't have control over your parents' property now. So just be careful when you do get your parents to go guarantor that it's structured correctly. Because it is a part of the security. So your loans become interwound.
Is there any other strategies to get that deposit, or?
Yeah, so if your parents were to go and, say, get equity out of their property, and say if they got a $100,000 loan on their mortgage, their house is worth $1 million. If they were to go and get a loan top-up loan on their property, which would be like $50,000. So their loan would go from $100,000 to $150,000. Then that extra $50,000, they take that and give that to you. That means that when they give you that $50,000, that they would be, if something happened, they would lose that $50,000, but their property would not be attached to your position. So if you screwed up and didn't pay your mortgage, they would take that property and sell it, and if there wasn't enough cash, they would sell your parents' property as well. So that has happened a lot in the past when people have done, not so smart moves. So yeah.
So could you say that, let's say that your parents give you money instead, they have the money for the deposit. What are the risks for that?
Well, I guess there's lots of risk, but probably the main risk is that you just don't pay them back. So, you want to be clear with that as well, because obviously when you're talking about family, you're talking about money and all those sorts of things, you don't ever want to have, a fallout over, $50,000 50 grand or 20 grand or 10 grand or anything like that, and no bitterness. So you want to have clear parameters and get it in writing. So, you might have mum, dad, and 3 siblings, and then mum and dad want to help someone out, and then something may happen to mum and dad, and then the other siblings might not know anything about that deal, or whatever the case may be. So make sure it's talked about, it's open, transparent, there's documentation of it, and you want to make sure everybody's protected. So some of the things that I've said just as answers, I feel like we're just having a real good chat here. I just want to be really clear that it's not financial advice to do this or do that, but you need to have the right advisors on your team and get that right advice, because everybody's position is different. So if you do, any of the listeners do need help, you can reach out to us, 1300 367 925, or email us at admin@binvested.com.au, and my team can put you in contact with experts that do specialise on this on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, there's lots of options there, but a lot of people just, like, the broker or the bank will try and just tie the loans together. It's easier, and it's less work and all that sort of stuff for the broker, or the bank, but they're getting more security. So you want to minimise risk at every step, and naturally you don't want to put your parents in a position to risk their property. And a lot of people don't look at these positions or question it. They just go, okay, I'll go and guarantor. 1, 2, 3, it'll all be okay. But things do go wrong in life, and you want to make sure that no one's going to get harmed, especially those that love you and care for you.
Yeah, I agree. So you actually did a risk management webinar yesterday, and I just wanted to let everyone know that if they're interested, they can check it out with the link in the description. What was your overall insight from giving that webinar?
In what way?
Like common objections that people would give.
I did a 3-hour webinar on it yesterday. A lot of things that people don't realise that are risks, like property. People think that debt is risky and all that. There's so many risks in our day-to-day life. We want to try and minimise risk as much as we can. And I think the biggest way of minimising risk is by giving yourself more options. So the more options that you can have, if something goes wrong, or if you need to turn left or right, you've got more flexibility to do so. So if you're driving down the road and your steering wheel only turns left and it doesn't go right, you need to turn opposite direction. You've only got left to turn. You've got to pray that it's in the right direction. If you've removed the fact that you can turn right. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself that freedom and minimising the risk. But there's lots of elements of risk, like whether risk is associated with locating a deal or managing a property or getting the finance, or a lot of the risk is actually in the detail of the decisions that we take. So whenever I make a move on a day-to-day basis, I'm always trying to ascertain if I take this action, because every action has a reaction. I want to make sure that I'm fully aware of the reactions of my action, and then weigh those actions up to see how they could affect me. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily look at those reactions and don't assess the situation enough, and they just make decisions that sound good or feel good, but don't fully understand that they could be holding themselves back. So there's opportunity cost risk, there's risks that could be from doing things wrong. There could be all different elements of risk there. Yeah.
So how do you find the right lender for you? What sort of questions should you be asking them so you can suss them out to see if they're legit?
If they're legit. Well, we're dealing with banks, so it could be said that none of the banks are legit, but they all say that they are legit. But look, ultimately, it depends on what your goals are. I think everybody should have a clear plan, and I think everyone should have clarity on where they're going in their investing journey. And in order to be able to maximise that position, you need to make sure that you've got the right people on board. So a lot of brokers out there will be like, oh, let's go get the cheapest interest rate, or let's go to this bank because they get paid a bigger commission, or something like that. But ultimately, when it comes to finance, it's very, very important. So if we look at building a portfolio, we could find 5 properties today that look at them all and go, okay, each one of those 5 properties is going to make us 100 grand or 200 grand or 500 grand. If every property was going to make you 100 grand, you'd just buy all 5 of them and you'd have 5 properties, you make 500 grand. But the problem is that if you don't have the money, you can't buy them. So you need to find the lenders that are going to support you the most, and the lenders that are going to be, what's more important, saving $5 a week on interest, or being able to get that property that's going to make you $100,000? Or, what is it that you need the bank? What is it that the bank's going to need from you? Do they need equity? Do they need cash flow? What are the elements there? So you need to be looking at what the bank's looking at from you, and then being able to deliver what the bank is requiring from you. So for most people starting out, I think that the big four banks are probably the best out there. Speak to a broker, but one bank will not help you get to 20 properties, and one bank won't lend you $5 to $10 million. You need to go to multiple banks. I see a lot of brokers that go to these crappier banks that are, second, third tier lenders from the start, and it might be easier for them to do a loan with them. They might be, cross-collateralizing a property or whatever, or poor structure. You want to make sure that, you protect yourself along the way. So 2 things that I never do. One thing I absolutely never do. One thing I do only a part of the time. So the thing that I never do is cross-collateralize the property. So if you had 2 properties, you don't want them to be tied together. You want them to be independent loans, because that gives you more flexibility. And I see so many people that got screwed over in life just because their loans were cross-collateralized. And the second thing is fixing interest rates, because a lot of people fix their interest rates straight away, and then they don't think that in 2 years' time they might want to sell the property, or they may need to refinance it, and then they're stuck in that loan product. So having a good debt strategy is very, very important. Having someone that understands what a debt strategy is. There's not too many people that understand that to build a large property portfolio. So yeah, that's why we've got a great team at Zinger. And for those that don't realise, like I set up a finance company, Zinger Finance, going back about 10 years ago now, and that's head up by a lady by the name of Rose. And Rose has been my personal broker now for about 16 years, and she's been a great help for me building my portfolio. I've had a lot of crappy brokers and bank people over the years, and it's really important. I can see the difference between people with large portfolios and people with small portfolios, and that is, the advice they get and the team that they have around them.
So B.Invested actually turned 12 years this year, and with 12 years of experience, what would you say the minimum amount you would need to start investing?
Probably about 25 grand.
25 grand?
Yeah. We bought some blocks of land the other day for 9 grand for people. They just bought them cash. We actually did a bulk deal, a block of land today. There's some land that was for sale for 150 grand in the same estate, in the same street, and we picked this land up for $25,000, so it's good value. House and land packages in the area selling for about 450, 500, so as long as you can build the house cheaper, you've got profit. So there's lots of upside on that front. But in average, like I've got this guy, and he came to me late last year, and he had $28,000, and he said to me, Nathan, look, I think I've got to wait another year or 2 to save up the rest of the deposit until I get about 50 grand or 60 grand, and I can look at doing a cheapie. And I said to him, look, let's see what we can do. And I said, we can do something now. I bought him a property for $80,000, and he needed to put down a 20% deposit. So 80 grand, 20% deposit was $16,000, plus closing costs of about 5 grand, means that he's into it for about 21, 22 grand. Then with that property, we settled it, and we went back and revalued it straight away, and we pulled out $45,000. And then we bought him a second property, which was in Harvey Bay, actually. It was a 2-bedroom unit. We picked up for 150 grand, and that one there is probably valued around the 230, 240 grand. We're able to go back and pull out equity from that one, and then we could buy him the third property. So this guy's gone from 28 grand to 3 properties in 6 months.
Yeah, that's crazy. The stories that I hear just working at B.Invested is, it's like it's a shocker for real.
Yeah.
But
the people that we've talked about over the years, like most of our investors end up, they might start with 0, or they might have 1 or 2 properties when they come to us. Average, they aim to get towards 10, 15, 20 properties in their portfolio. And these people are not, people that are ballers that are, you know, cashed up or anything like that, with heaps of money, they might only start off with, you know, 50 or 100 grand, and then over a period of 1, 2, 3 years, they'll end up with double-digit property portfolio. I've got one lady who's just purchased a 7th property, and she'll be listening to this, I'm sure. And she started with 70 grand last year, and we were able to pull out equity and go again, pull out equity, go again. And she's at 7, and I hope to get it at 10 by the end of this year, which is really cool, within like an 18-month to 24-month period to get to a double-digit property portfolio. Which.
So you said that you can start with 25,000, but isn't it also important to build up an emergency fund to pay off those, I guess, those extra costs that may have from those first property that you buy?
Yeah, and I think it's important to have a buffer. So, you know, each property that I buy, I try to have sort of like about a 5 grand buffer. So if you've got 10 properties and sort of 50 grand, and the reason why I say 5 grand buffer is that if a water heater goes or a kitchen goes or something like that, you've got enough money to cover that. But if the property is vacant for 3 months or 6 months, then you've got enough to pay the mortgages. So looking at the, you know, most of the investors, like, you know, if you got so the guy that had 28 grand, he had 21 grand, that was stamp duty, legal fees, whatever. He still had sort of 5-6 grand left over in case something goes wrong. And it depends on one's position. Like, you know, you may not have a buffer today, but if you've got a position to be able to save each month, in another 6 months, you can save a bigger buffer too, as you save towards your next deposit. So everybody's risk tolerance is very, very different. So it's important to have a buffer in case something goes wrong, and things do go wrong, and that's how you sort of minimise risk, is by having that buffer.
So do you recommend starting with that minimum amount or saving up a bit more to get a better quality property?
Yeah. So like that guy I was telling you about, that'd be like the real minimum. So it's sort of 25-30 grand. Each property I buy, I've always been a big fan of putting down the 20% deposit plus closing costs. So it's about 5% that I normally allocate for closing costs. So about 25% of the property purchase price. So on average, the properties that I'd pick up would be around the 200,000. So we're picking up properties in all different states. I did one in Perth today for 150 grand. Looking at you know, other states, whether it be Brisbane 180, 200, Sydney like 300 grand. On average, between 150 and 350 would be the purchase price, is what I pay. If you look at an average of say 200,000 purchase price, 25% of that would be $50,000. So if you had a 20% deposit of 200 grand, would be 40 grand, and then about 5% for the closing cost would be 10. There's your 50 grand. So if you, I often say to people, if you've got 50 grand, or every time you can come up with $50,000, whether it be from savings or equity or whatever, every time you say you come up with 50 grand, that's a deposit for a new property purchase.
So you help clients source below market value properties.
Yeah.
So there's like, I guess a misconception based around that, you know, below market value properties are like, there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's because people think like cheap is cheap, and there's a difference between a value, like something that's below market value. That's why I use the word below market value, and I don't use the word cheap, because you could have something that's cheap because it's a cheap knockoff of something. So you don't want to buy something because it's cheap. You want to buy it because it's below market value. You want to buy something that's quality. So the properties that I buy, I buy them everywhere. I locate deals and negotiate them in every corner of the country. The properties that I buy are residential properties predominantly, mum and dad sort of properties, people that could live in there, anyone. Some properties have high elements of risk, so that could be off-the-plan properties, specialty properties like NDIS and NRAS, properties like student accommodation, retirement, over 55s, or some sort of like holiday sort of units. Those properties have massive risk because they don't have any other market apart from what they're designed for, and that's why the banks require larger deposits. And they generally want like a 50% deposit or a 40% deposit if they will actually lend on that property, and the capital growth is not as high. if any at all. So the properties that I buy are the ones that the banks like, and that there's an abundance of people that would be tenants and property owners themselves. So I don't want to lock out any area of the market. So when I'm buying properties, I don't want to buy something that's cheap and crappy that's going to cause me headaches. The properties that I buy generally, like 95% of the time, need little to no work done to them and are very just bread and butter, basic, blue collar, affordable properties for everyday Australians. So you want to make sure that you've got something that's rentable, that's saleable, and there's a large market for, and you don't want to be buying stuff that's going to be problematic or continuously need fixing up or, serious renovations done to it. Thanks for asking the questions, and finally, just thank you very much for all your help you do on behalf of the community and, making these podcasts for everybody. So I appreciate all your help, and it's really, really cool. I love having you around and doing cool stuff, so it's fun. So thank you. And if you do like the podcast, please just do me a favour, everyone. Sometimes, what we do is a bit demanding and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of pressures, there's lots of things going on. We're a very, very fast-paced environment. And, my team do a lot. They really do. They do a lot of activity to try and deliver for the community, whether it be for free or for paid-for services. If you do, appreciate what we do and do appreciate what the team does, if you could maybe leave a little review on Google or Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening this from. If you're seeing it from YouTube, smash up the like, subscribe and share it with your friends. And if you do like what we're putting out there, do leave a comment or a review, whether it be on Google or Facebook or I forget what the other ones are, product review or whatever. If you do like what my team are doing, whether it be from Zenith Legal or whether it be from Zinger Finance or One Path Accountants or Blink Property or Property Investment Agents or B.Invested or one of the other businesses, please just, give a bit of love to the team. They do awesome things. I've got a great team. I'm only as good as the people I've got around me. So please do that. And once again, if you need any help with anything, you can find us at binvested.com.au, give us a buzz, 1300 367 925, or send us an email at admin@binvested.com.au. Have a great day. Bye for now.
We're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you've been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I've never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really